Hey Bob Jones, welcome back to the Media Madhouse podcast. I'm Rena.
And I'm Abbie.
And today we're talking about the Oscars 2025 Best Animated Feature Film winner, Flow, which was released in October of last year.
So before we get into the content in the movie, I'm a little animation nerd, so we're going to talk about some of the production of it. This movie was primarily made by the studios Dreamwell Studio, Sacre Bleu Productions, and Take 5, and I thought this was just really cool because it was made from 3 different countries, Latvia, France, and Belgium, which, I don't know, it's just cool to see different countries coming together for an animated project. In addition to that, the movie was made entirely in Blender, which if you don't know is like a free animating program. It's not really like the studio standard. That tends to be more Maya, which costs like $3 bazillion every month.
My favorite amount of money.
I got the opportunity last summer to go to SCAD to do like a week-long little summer seminar where I got to work with Maya, and like even though it's like studio standard, it still was like buggy and would crash and just, I don't know, it was interesting.
It's crazy to think that like that's what studios animate in and it's still not even fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it could just be like that the computers there weren't like the best, but it's literally like $145 a month or something.
Well, I mean, it's SCAD, isn't it? So
Yeah.
they should have good computers.
That's true. SCAD, if you're listening, I said nothing.
I don't know why you'd be listening, but it
But
didn't
if you
happen.
are, yeah. So it was made entirely in Blender, and I just think it's nice seeing movies be very appreciated that are made in programs that like aren't a bunch of money, because it makes it more inclusive and it opens up the industry to more people. I love the industry being a little bit more accessible sometimes. And even though you kind of like, you do see a quality difference, like it looks a little bit more like video game animation, I feel like, especially with just like how they do the models and the texturing versus how they do the lighting. I feel you see really, really impressive lighting in video games, and then some of just the normal textures won't be as impressive. Not that they don't look good in this, because they do. It's just like, it's different and it's more reminiscent of a video game. But that being said, do you want to get into the summary?
Yeah. So the movie starts out with our main character, who is a cat, and Cat is living its best little life in an abandoned home. It's like a little woodworking shop. And Cat eventually goes down to a river to try and get fish, but is very scared of water and does not want to go into the water. And then out from the tree line, this group of dogs comes and they scare the cat. They also get a fish, and Cat's like hiding in the grass, and he eventually grabs the fish. And this dog, who's like, I assume it's a golden retriever kind of thing.
I assumed so, yeah.
But this dog becomes a very important character. And just for the record, as we're explaining all the movies and talking about this movie, I'm at least probably going to refer to each animal with a name that's probably just its animal name. Mm-hmm. So like cat is just going to be cat. Then you have lemur and dog and bird.
Yeah.
Because it's just easier, and it's not like there's any dialogue, so they don't really get names. It's just easier that way. So the cat gets scared by the dog, and the dog sees the cat, and it's like this big pack of dogs, and they chase after this cat, and the cat, while he's running away, eventually drops a fish and runs into this clearing, losing the dogs. And then as the cat's just like kind of walking around like, oh, this place is nice, there's the dogs that come running out from the tree line again, but not to chase the cat. They run away, and then there is a stampede. And the cat's like trying to dodge the hooves of the stampede. And then there's this like ominous rumbling in the distance. And I'm like, oh, is this going to be a movie about like deforestation? No, there's a ginormous flood that comes and sweeps the cat away.
I feel like they do a really good job with scale in this scene. Like everything looks really giant in comparison to this cat, and you get like the cat's perspective from the ground very well.
The camera work in this movie is really incredible. Mm-hmm. It really personalizes everything. But the cat is kind of like struggling in the water, doesn't really know how to swim against the current and everything, and is absolutely terrified. And then eventually it does get to land after it finds a dog. Like the cat clings onto a branch, and then the dog also clings onto a branch, and he's like, whoa, dude, this is my branch. Get off.
He's like literally hitting him. It's so funny.
And the dog's
like, get off.
The dog's just like, what the hell, man?
I just want to not drown, please.
But the dog's weight breaks the branch, and they both go back into the stream. They find land eventually. The dog just kind of follows the cat around. The cat eventually like goes back to its home, which is a little woodworking shop, and falls asleep. And the next day he looks out the window and is like, what a beautiful day. Mm-hmm. And then he looks out the window and is like, that dog is still there. Get off my lawn. And in the distance, now that everything's flooded, there is a boat sailing by that has the other pack of dogs. So it like has all the rest of the dogs, and then the golden retriever dog kind of thing joins them, and they sail off to yonder, and the cat eventually flees because its home is flooding, and it climbs onto this like really tall cat statue, and the water's like slowly rising, and the cat's like freaking out, and then it sees this boat in the distance, and eventually it kind of like halfway swims towards the boat as the boat's coming towards it, and cat jumps onto the boat, and that's where we meet our third character of this little group, the capybara.
Bro is so silly. Literally best character. He just grunts at people.
He does not care. He literally sees this cat and is like, what's up? And then goes to sleep.
You're here now, I guess.
we love him. He's so great. So they're chilling. The next day, there's like a whole montage of the cat and capybara falling asleep. And the next day, the cat falls into the water as they're like sailing through some area that has a flock of secretary birds flying above. And these secretary birds are trying to grab the cat, I assume because they think he's prey. And he falls into the water. He's like constantly having to duck into the water so that way the birds don't grab him. And then at some point, he just like starts trying to swim up, and he can't swim up, and he just like almost dies. And then a whale comes, it's like this whale creature comes up, and he like lifts him up out of the water, and it's really cute, and the cat's fine.
They show like a sea creature, like when the cat is on top of the big cat statue. There's like this big sea creature. Was that the whale, or was it something else?
I think it's the whale. I think it's the same big sea creature throughout the entire movie.
Okay. It just seemed too long because I felt like it like came out of the water multiple times. I don't know.
I think it's supposed to be the same one because that's why Cat kind of like mourns it at the end. Spoiler alert in our summary, I guess. I don't know. Hopefully you would have watched the movie, obviously. So the whale saves the cat, and then there is a secretary bird that comes and picks Cat up off of the whale and drops him back on top of the boat. And Cat like kind of uses his claws to slow his descent by digging into like the sail of the boat, and then falls and is like, oh, he's chill. Afterwards, the capybara and cat, they kind of keep sailing along. They find a lemur, and he's like just gathering his treasure in a basket, and they convince the lemur to come onto the boat and drag his treasures with him. And it's like, lemur, join the team. And then they start sailing again. A lot of montages of just sailing across the sea until the next thing happens. Or not sea, but the water.
They do, I feel like, a good job of making it not like be boring though, even though a lot of it's just like them on the boat.
Yeah, it's not boring to watch in the movie. It's just boring to explain what's happening.
Yeah.
But we got to talk about it somehow. So they start sailing along. Cat eventually falls asleep at the very top of the sail and has a nightmare about the flood and the stampede. Afterwards, the boat lands in the morning. They find the dog again. And the lemur finds this kind of like ball decoration ornament that originally came from Cat's home that is kind of now just like floating in the water. And while they're landed, they find the flock of secretary birds, and the secretary bird that saved Cat comes and like drops a fish down in front of Cat, and it's like, here, you're hungry and you're scared of the water, here's a fish. And then like the leader secretary bird comes up and is like, what are you doing? Stop taking care of that creature. Nuh-uh.
Get out of here.
And so the group goes over this crest of a hill, or like maybe into a little valley area, and they find an entire flock of secretary birds, and they are immediately hostile towards the group. And so Cat freaks out and flees towards the edge of the water, and the leader secretary bird is like on the verge of attacking Cat when the secretary bird from earlier, who I'm now just going to call Bird, or our bird, because it's easier to differentiate that way, kind of like jumps in front of Cat to protect him. And the leader and our bird duel it out, but our bird loses, and they like hold him down while they break his wing.
It's like honestly really terrible.
It was so sad. I want to say I did not watch the trailer. I just heard about this movie. It looked adorable, and I was like, I'm going to go into this blind. I had no idea what to expect. I don't know if I thought it was going to be like a cute, happy movie, but man,
I figured something would happen though.
That was really sad.
It reminds me, like anytime something bad would happen to the cat, it reminded me of like that meme where it's like, oh, that's Gore. That's Gore of my comfort character.
That's Gore of my comfort character. Oh, that's Gore. That's Gore of my comfort character. But the bird gets his wing broken, and his flock like flies off without him because now he can't fly. And So Bird joins the team, and the bird kind of becomes the captain of the ship. He's the one who like steers everything, who makes decisions about where they're going. And they sail for a little bit more. They find a pack of lemurs that's sailing on a different boat, and the lemur that is part of our little pack, he shows them a pretty mirror. He's like, look at this cool thing I have. But Cat does not like the other lemurs. He like hisses at them, swats at them, and they're like, whatever, dude. And they go back on their boat and they sail away, and our lemur's like sad. He's like, oh, and that's people of my kind. And then they eventually...
Cat is racist.
Yeah, Cat is racist, guys. Eventually, they travel through this like really beautiful cityscape.
It's so gorgeous. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this beautiful flooded cityscape that just like almost looks like Greek ancient architecture, but you can tell it's like supposed to be a little bit more modern. It's so beautiful, though. I love how they do it. And the wide shot before they actually get to it, you can see in the distance that there's like this super large spire. And that's like what Bird wants to go to. Mm-hmm. So like they're constantly steering towards this spire.
And once they're in the city too, you get this shot of the whale again where it like comes out of the water and the lighting is so gorgeous. And I know they use it for like all the promo stuff for it, but like it's genuinely like amazing and I love it. And I know they spent so much time on that shot.
The cityscape in general is just so pretty. It's probably my favorite scenery in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Is that cityscape. So they travel through it. Bird plays fetch with the dog with the little ornament decoration from earlier that Lemur got attached to. And Bird eventually throws it into the water. Lemur freaks out and just like jumps on Bird's back. Bird's steering the boat. So they get stuck on a tree, and also Cat is like on the edge of the boat and gets pushed into the water. And Cat's like drowning in the water, and then he sees the fish, and he's like, wait, the water isn't so bad. These fish are so pretty. And then the capybara also starts swimming. He like jumps into the water as well. And then the cat starts fishing for a stash of fish after he's like comfortable in the water. He overcomes his fear of water, and he can now get his own food. And in order to get unstuck from the tree that Lemur got them stuck on, the whale from earlier, as you were talking about, jumps out of the water, and the splash from it kind of like knocks them loose. So there's a little montage of, you know, them being all happy, them sailing through the cityscape while Cat continuously catches fish. And he kind of uses the fish to feed both himself, and the dog also eats a little bit of it, and then he also gives some fish to the bird. So it's really cute, and they are constantly sailing closer to the spire. They get out of this cityscape eventually, and they go towards this like tower where the pack of dogs randomly got stuck.
It's kind of funny. They're just like there.
They're just there. Who knows where their boat is? I mean, you see their boat later on. It probably like drifted off, and it's like very clearly destroyed. But they just got stuck there, and the bird is like fully intending to go past them. He's like, I ain't going over there. I don't care about them. But the dog like stares at him, and then the capybara goes and stares at the bird, and he's like, I don't care about either of you guys. And then the cat goes and stares and is like, we should probably go help them. And the bird's like, fine. And they steer over there, and they get the dogs on the boat, and nobody's happy about it except for, you know, our dog. And then they play tug of war with this mirror that Lemur became obsessed with, and they break it. And Lemur's like really sad because that's like his favorite thing. And then our dog feels bad. He's like, oh, wait, I didn't know that they were bullies like that. I'm sorry. So sad.
I didn't know my gang was mean like that.
I didn't know my gang sucked. My bad, guys. So they continue sailing. Everybody chills out. They eventually start sailing through this storm that's like knocking everybody back and forth. And they are continuously trying to sail towards the spire. At some point, Cat travels back up to the top of the sail, and the waves are so rough, it hits against the boat, and Cat falls off and blacks out.
Which is important.
That was awful. That was awful. The fact that he just like, the sound effects of this movie and the music is the main thing that you rely on for this storytelling. And just the like sickening thud of him hitting the bottom of the boat was so awful. I was like, I'm going to cry.
I was talking to my coworkers at work about this. Like, it's kind of random, but just like of the sound of like bodies hitting the floor is such a specific sound. Like even if it's just like animal bodies or something, and it's this specific feeling that you react, like your reaction to it is so specific because it's like ugh, like it's a specific type of like cringing because it's like you know what that sound is.
You know what it is, and you know like how it would feel because we've all fallen before. Obviously, in the movies and stuff, none of us have hopefully fallen from that height, but it's still like so sickening of like you don't know if the character's gonna come back up alive or not. He falls, he blacks out. The capybara eventually like wakes him up by nudging him under this little floorboard because there's like 2 floors to the ship or whatever, and he nudges him under like the deck or whatever to keep him out of the rain. And the bird eventually flies off, and the cat kind of like jumps up onto the edge and is like meowing at him because he's like, no, come back, you're my friend, where are you going? And he falls into the water again after another wave hits, but instead of trying to clamber back on the boat, he starts swimming towards the shoreline. And he eventually reaches the shoreline, and now they're directly at the spire. So Cat climbs up this huge set of stairs all the way up to the top of the spire, and he meets with Bird, and they kind of stand there, and then there's like magic happening. It gets a little weird, and they start floating, and Bird just kind of like ascends to heaven.
I hate when that happens.
I hate when I ascend to heaven. And then Cat just kind of like watches it happen and is like, oh, he's gone.
Bye.
So Cat eventually goes all the way back down to the shoreline and sees that the boat is in the distance, and he's like, no, the boat, it's gone. So, I mean, that entire scene of like Bird ascending and then Cat going down and trying to call out to the boat, like, no, please don't leave me. He jumps into the water and starts trying to swim towards it, but obviously like the waves are still rough, and the ornament somehow like fell overboard, or I don't know if it's the same ornament or if it's a different one, and he just kind of like clings to it and hopes for the best, and it's really sad. But then the flood recedes because there's like an earthquake that happens, and it looked at first like there was just trees floating above, and it was really confusing, like what the hell.
This whole 10-minute sequence is like very disorienting, and not necessarily in a bad way. It's just like a little surrealist where it's like, okay, like I appreciate this like artistically and symbolically, but like I don't really understand what's going on right now.
Like it's one thing you have to sit through in order to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
So the flood recedes due to an earthquake or something because there's a big crack in the forest wherever they are afterwards. And Cat's running around trying to find his friends. He eventually finds Lemur and is like, oh, remember me? And Lemur's like, I don't care. And then Cat walks off sadly, and Lemur's like, fine, I guess I do care. And they find the ship that got stuck in a tree after the flood receded. And the dogs and the capybara are in there, and they go over there after this long sequence where Cat almost dies.
We
for
were
the
stressing
30th
out.
time. I was literally sitting here yelling at you, there's 6 minutes left, nothing bad can happen. There is 6 minutes left, nothing bad can happen.
It's such like a long scene too, and it's like it does such a good job at tension, but it's also like, oh my gosh, you're torturing me. Like let them all be okay.
I think the issue is that we were seeing like the timer countdown for the end of this movie, and like the actual end credits to the movie are not that long because they had all the 2 minutes of title cards in the beginning.
We didn't even talk about that. It was like 37 title cards. It was crazy.
It was so long. I literally counted it. It was 2 minutes of title cards.
Yeah.
It was literally like that Family Guy meme where it's just so many. We were sitting there. I was like, is this going to end?
It's just like Amelia Perez.
Oh, my God.
But, like, that's largely in part because it was made in 3 different countries. So,
yeah, that's going to do a lot. But all the animals are back together except for Bird, obviously. And then
ascended.
And then there's like a stampede of the deer in the background again. Cat freaks out and he runs off, and he eventually finds the whale. And now that the flood has receded, the whale is stuck on land and dying. And the cat's like purring and rubbing up against it like,
It's
oh,
so
you're dying.
sweet.
It's so sad. And he looks off towards the spire where Bird is like, obviously the bird is dead. Like, that's the symbolic meaning of it. Like, Bird died. Then Cat just kind of looks at the reflection of himself in a puddle, and Lemur, Capybara, and the dog kind of come up behind him, and they all just kind of group together. And that's the end. That's where it ends. So, Very symbolic movie, very surrealist. There is not a single lick of dialogue in this movie, but
I feel like the whole time we were both just like, oh, we're going to have to look up an analysis about this because I don't really understand what's happening.
We did have to look up an analysis a little bit. We didn't have to do it as badly as I thought we were going to have to. Like, it wasn't as necessary as I thought it was going to be.
It was mostly like the stuff about the bird. Like, it's very like almost like religious, like the whole ascension thing. But like most people agreed that it's just like a symbolic scene of the bird drowning.
Yeah.
Which I honestly appreciate that they did rather than the bird just like straight up dying. Because they definitely could have done that.
I would have cried.
Yeah.
I would have sobbed so hard. I would have had to stop the movie for a little bit.
I feel like it would have, if you just had the bird like die, it wouldn't have been necessarily on theme for what the film was going for. Because it does have harsher moments and it does have like tragic moments and moments with tension and whatnot. But like none of it's like, oh, that was like terrible.
That was Gore of my comfort character.
That was Gore of my comfort character.
Let's get into it, shall we? Yeah, we have to talk about the art style. So beautiful.
So yummy.
And you were saying how you think that, especially on the cat's face and everything, it looks almost painted.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's made in Blender, but everything feels very stylized. It felt very reminiscent of Slime Rancher to me, mainly in the scenery and everything, not necessarily the animals specifically.
It had this like mix of like painterly for the animals and whatnot, but then like the foliage and the lighting was like more towards the realistic side, like sort of like what you would expect for like video game, like high-res animation. And I don't know, I thought it was an interesting artistic direction to go with it, because I think if you want one or the other, it would kind of take away from the experience.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot more like cinematic to have the mix of them.
It definitely felt like a video game, which is not a bad thing at all. Basically like any Unity game I can think of.
Yeah.
Where it's a walkthrough kind of game or puzzle game or just any calm game kind of like that. We, looked it up eventually. It reminded both of us of the game Shelter.
I was going crazy trying to find this game because I'm like, it reminds me of something in particular. But like Shelter has all these like really, really good textures, and just like especially how they animated the dogs in this movie reminded me of like how they did the animals in Shelter. It's like almost like low poly-ish. It's just like focusing on the shapes of the animals
and the movement
rather than like it looking realistic.
Because no matter how realistic something looks, frame by frame, you want it to all blend together when it's actually in motion.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they focused on that more than, oh, does it look realistic right now? Because there's so many games that like focus on realism, and then you look at the actual animation and it's like, that looks off and weird and uncanny.
But the main thing that the entire movie reminded me of was the game Stray, which if you don't know what that is like, it's a little game where you play as your little cat up in this foresty area, and then you like fall down into this like robot city where all the humans have died from this disease, and it's just run by these like bipedal robots now, and you're having to like navigate through the city to get out. And it's just like, it's so wholesome, and it's like this cat having to learn to work with these robots in a similar way where I feel like the cat in this movie has to learn to work together with these animals to get to safety.
Very beautiful movie in general. And hopefully if you're watching a flow, you would know Stray, because I feel like it's similar in the industry of like artistic media. Like if you like games and you like movies, you're probably going to know about both.
Yeah. We kind of touched on it earlier, but like the storyline could be a little bit confusing sometimes, mostly because just of the lack of dialogue. Not that I would have put dialogue in this, because I think it would have kind of ruined the vibe, and that them just being like normal animals, I say in quotations because of the bird stuff, but I think it really needed that sort of like touch of realism for you to sympathize with these animals more, and for it to not be like Disney-ified, because I'm so tired of Disney everything.
I think I think the audience can tell we're tired of Disney.
Yeah, for how much we complain about it literally every single episode.
Yeah. What do you mean? We totally haven't complained about it every single episode.
I think we have.
I think we've mentioned it every episode.
Like, literally, we'll be talking about how something's good, and we're like, unlike whatever Disney movie.
Unlike what happened here.
Oh my gosh.
The storyline is a very trust the process kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not a movie you could have on in the background if you're not paying attention. Unless you've watched the movie multiple times and you kind of know it by heart, you can't have it on the background, because if you just pop in at any moment, it's going to be like, what is going on?
Yeah. Well, it reminded me a lot of like a Ghibli film in that aspect, because I feel like a lot of times with Ghibli films, you really do have to like sit down and just watch it the first time, and then afterwards be like, okay, what happened? Like one of the movies we're going to cover later is The Boy and the Heron. And when I first watched it, I was like, okay, that was good. But like, huh? And that's kind of what I felt like with this one for a second. And I had to like think about it and be like, okay, it does make sense. It's just a little confusing on the first watch.
Yeah, you just have to think about it. And then when you do think about it, it's like, wait, now I've suddenly gotten more confused than if you didn't think about it. The realism definitely helped empathize with the characters a lot more. Every single time that something bad happened to the cat, we were like, we are literally going to die if something bad happens to this cat.
No, it's because the cat just kept going through it, and like every single time it'd be like, no, stop.
I swore to you, and I was not joking. I said, if this cat dies, I'm giving this movie a 0 out of 10. Luckily, that didn't happen.
The cat didn't die, guys. It's okay.
The cat did not die. I'll tell you what, though, because it's like the way that the movie is set up, I wasn't like sure that there was that plot armor, because you watch certain movies and there's this kind of expectation that you go in whenever you're watching a movie, and it's always nice to have that expectation kind of proven wrong as far as it goes with uniqueness and just creativity, because if you don't meet expectations in a bad way, then it's like, oh, this is awful. But because I didn't have any expectations going into this, and I knew that it was kind of like anything goes kind of film, I wasn't sure that Cat actually had that plot armor, and I was like, are they just going to kill him off at any moment and I'm going to just sob and be a mess for the rest of my life? So
I could have definitely seen it being like one of those movies where it's like, oh, like all the animals die in the end because, you know, it's this natural disaster.
Because natural disaster, yeah.
But I am glad that they didn't take it that way. And I do think having like one of the animals die was the way to do it, because if it was just like, oh, and it all ended happily ever after.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the message of it and everything. Having that empathy towards the character, you know, I cried a little bit. I don't know if you cried a little bit, but I cried a little bit.
I was like working on stuff at the same time, so I don't think I was like as emotionally invested in it in the moment as you were, but I was definitely like especially the scene where like the capybara and the dogs are on a boat and the cat's like trying to get them off. I was like, oh, I'm stressing out.
I was stressing out. I can't remember exactly which scenes I was crying at. I think right after the bird had died, and Cat was just kind of like floating in the water all sad and stuff. That was definitely one of the ones where I was like, oh, this is heartbreaking. In the beginning, I can't remember exactly where it was. It had to have been right when the flood started.
I think it was during the flooding stuff.
Yeah. Because that was when I was like, oh my God, if anything bad happens to this cat, I'm actually going to not be happy. I don't know what we can say on here and what we can't. You guys should understand our sentiment, though. We're going to do something if the cat dies. There's also so many small details as far as the movement goes. And this goes back to focusing on the animation and motion of the characters more than how it looks. There's just so many small details that really mean a lot, like the bird's head twitching and tilting and all that stuff. The tails of dog and cat trying to be reminiscent of their moods, because, you know, obviously those real life animals do have very specific mannerisms and behaviors. The ear twitches of them especially, and anytime the cat was like playful or hunting, his eyes would dilate.
That was my favorite.
And it was so cute. It would dilate, and then anytime something bad would happen, it would immediately undilate.
Yeah.
It's just adorable.
I legitimately, I love more than anything when studios will put in the time to look at real animals and see how they move, because not to complain about Disney again,
but we're complaining about Disney.
I'm complaining about Disney again. I feel like they go a little bit more towards, when they're doing humanoid animals, they go a little bit more towards just human mannerisms rather than the animal side than I would really prefer in a lot of instances. And I really do appreciate, this is a big thing they did in Stray too, because they took all these videos of cats. I really appreciate when they put in little natural movements that those animals actually do, because it just makes it so much more realistic and it gives them personalities, and you don't have to make something human personified for it to have a character to it and for it to seem very natural.
Yeah, and also in real life, you don't like an animal because of how human it acts. I adore my cats, not because they act human, but because they act like cats, because they're little creatures, and I don't know, they're just little creatures and I love them.
Well, and animals also have their little unique silly things they do too, and I feel by just as an industry pushing oh, we want our animal characters to be very human, it's okay, but you're missing out on all the little cute animal things.
There's so many interesting facts that people will just look up and explore about animals, And even if you humanize them a little bit to where, let's say that they have a voice, or maybe they're even just anthropomorphic, you can give them animal qualities to give them that kind of like cuteness that humans see in animals. It's like, oh, they're different from us, and that's why we like them, is because they're different, not because they're similar to us.
But also just in general, like the animal models were so well done. And like, again, there was so much detail put into them that I really appreciated, especially with like the birds. You could see like the individual feathers on the wings. And I just love that so much.
Oh, when we first saw the birds, so beautiful. I was like, this creature right here, I love this thing. Because they would spread their wings out so much too. Because they were like, that was just how they expressed themselves. It was so beautiful. And moving on from the animation stuff, the music was gorgeous. Obviously, it has to be for a movie that is told entirely without dialogue and relies on sound effects and music. Obviously, the music has to be good, but I really enjoyed this music overall. There was just so much like richness and seniority to it that would carry out throughout the entire film. Like something that was happy would have a very gleeful feel that was characterized into the movie. Like it wasn't generic. It didn't feel like you could put this stuff in any other movie and it would fit.
Yeah.
It felt specific to this movie. And I love that. I love when you can hear music and you can go, oh, this is specific to this movie, because then when you listen to something else, you go, this reminds me of this movie.
Well, you would also be like picking out instruments. And I think that's also really important when you're trying to make something really unique to a movie, is like you're not just making it like stereotypical Hans Zimmerman cinematic.
Yeah.
Like you can be like, oh, that's a little bit of whatever instrument. Like there's some interesting low reed happening right there.
Hans Zimmerman is good, guys.
He's
but
really
he's
good.
everywhere.
He's everywhere. And like I feel like he set the standard for like just the general movie industry, which it's not necessarily a bad thing, but when literally everyone is just trying to be Hans Zimmerman, it's like, okay, guys.
When you look at something artistic like the movie industry, and when it's been going on as long as it has for literal centuries, you want something new and unique. You don't want to just have a basis and stick to it. You don't go to an art museum expecting the same thing everywhere. Now, granted, you're going to get a lot of the same stuff, but you want to be able to find those pieces that really stick out to you because they're unique from everything, whether it be in colors, in style, in contrast, anything like that. And that's kind of what this movie does. It stands out.
And there is something to be said of like, oh, like this works, so we should keep using this. But it's also like, if everybody's saying that, then it's like, okay, everything literally is the same.
And it's just boring. You become desensitized to it. And it's like, when you have so much that's part of the same criteria, then when you put it all together, you can't pick out each piece. You can't go, oh, I like this because it's that. I like this because it's that. You just go, well, I like them all because they're all part of the same group.
And I feel like that's kind of just the point that we're at with in general in like the movie and animation industry right now, is because it's just an oversaturation of this one type of doing things, so that when you have little things coming out like Spider-Verse or this or like anything that's doing something very unique, it's so highly praised because it's deviating from that standard. And you have things like, I don't know, like Disney or other big film studios that are like not getting talked about at all because they're just doing the same thing over and over and there's nothing to talk about.
It's so boring. Besides that, obviously, we're praising the movie. The music is just really good. I like when they kind of have almost solos with the instruments, because you see so much music now that's put in movies, and sure, it may be beautiful, but it's all like very orchestral and everybody's playing at once. But it's always nice when you have like just one instrument playing and you can tell exactly what it is. And obviously I'm very biased because I play bass clarinet, but I love when bass clarinet is used as like a solo, like just this droning sound to do kind of an ominous background. And I don't know if it was a bass clarinet. It was hard to tell, but there is a part in the movie where they kind of have a very low reedy sound that's used a lot for that kind of ominous tension building, and I think it fits really well.
I also like, and obviously I'm biased because I play clarinet, but I do really miss, like, I feel like older cartoons in particular would use like clarinet as like a little solo, like mischievous sounding moment. And I just miss that so much. Like, I miss little feature sections for different instruments in just general the entertainment industry.
Yeah. I think it's just because so many companies are combining strings and high winds. So like they go together and it just becomes this wall of sound.
It's just like, this is the melody. It's just strings and high wind.
Yeah, it's not any specific instrument where you're like, I like that because it's one instrument that I really like. If it was a violin solo, then it could be like, oh, I really like that violin. Or, you see a lot of John Williams, he loves French horn. And that French horn sounds really good when he uses it as a little solo. Or you can do saxophone, soprano saxophone, clarinet, anything. Just solo it out a little bit more. And especially if you do a trumpet, just do one trumpet, guys. You don't need 20 of them.
I know we're doing all this complaining about like there not being feature instruments and stuff, but like the one that gets in the most is trumpet. And I'm like, guys, can we do anything but trumpet? I'm sorry if you're a trumpet player, but like I'm so tired of it.
I'm not.
Well,
I'm not. If you're a trumpet player, you know what you did.
You know what you did.
You know who you are in this community.
One piece of animation in like the last, not like after the year 2000, that I really appreciated, that sort of like you can pick out instruments and whatnot, is Over the Garden Wall.
Yes.
And part of that is because like the main character Wirt plays clarinet, so there's like a focus on a lot of reedy instruments. But there are so many moments where it's like the music is thinner and you can just hear more individual parts. And I really do enjoy music like that because I do like the orchestral stuff where it's like really big and it's composed very thickly with a lot of different parts. But I also really enjoy thin stuff where you can pick out individual parts.
Yeah, you want contrasting stuff. You don't want to have the same kind of music throughout the entire film. And to kind of layer on top of that with you mentioning Over the Garden Wall, Steven Universe.
Yes.
Steven Universe has a lot of sound work that is fantastic. The soundtrack for Steven Universe is beautiful, and each character has their own unique instrument. So whenever there is like something happening that deals with them, that instrument is almost always being played. Mm-hmm. And then when they're not in that scene, that instrument is almost never used.
Which is so unique, and I love character themes so much. They're so good.
I think more people need to incorporate instruments as part of their character. Even if the character doesn't play an instrument, they just need to have that kind of unique personality of, this instrument reminds me of this character. It gives it that connection, and you kind of flesh the character out a little bit more. We'll move on from music. Overall, I think this movie was just very beautiful. Shall we give ratings?
I would say probably like an 8 out of 10. Not that it was bad or anything, because I did really, really enjoy it. I just feel like in some parts it could be a little bit clearer, and I don't think it's a movie that I would necessarily be like, oh, I'm like really excited to just sit down and rewatch this.
Yeah.
So
it's a very artistic film. It's definitely like for a specific audience, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I think it's very beautiful, and I think it really challenged the industry a lot for being as unique as it is and coming from a unique place in the world. It's not just coming from a big industry, because this is the first indie movie to like win an Oscar.
Yeah, I think it was,
which is amazing. It
love indie animation.
It completely deserves it. I probably also give it an 8 out of 10. One of the things I'm a little confused about is the dream sequence. I understand the point of it, of like showcasing that Kat has a huge fear of the flood and is like, obviously semi-traumatized that his home was flooded, but I just feel like the dream sequence kind of confused us, because I know that as we were watching it, we were like, what's happening? And I was like, oh, I think it's a dream sequence. And you were like, oh, that makes sense, because I don't even know if you clocked that until I said it.
Well, there were just a couple of different parts that were like disorienting, I guess I would say, where it's like, I'm not too sure what's happening, and not in like a good way of like, this is artsy. And it was more just like, I don't understand what's going on. And it like takes me a second to understand, which isn't necessarily bad. But if it's happening like 5 or 6 times across the film, it's like, oh, I think we're just not very clear.
You just got to duck a little bit for that. If it happens like once, then it's like whatever. Overall, still a fantastic movie. Definitely a must watch.
But if you like flow, I would definitely recommend checking out some other indie animations.
Yeah, I'd say go watch any of the kind of short films that are on YouTube. There's so many of them from Pixar, and if you just look up like short films, then you're probably going to find the animations that like were super popular in 2010s, and even now they're still popular. Like a lot of art classes and even some English classes will show them, because I know that I've seen a lot of them in my classes. Go watch those, They're pretty. You've probably seen a lot of them.
A lot of them are made as thesis films of animation students, which, supports those students. So go watch them.
Obviously. If you like that kind of storyline, or if you just really liked Flow and you want something that's kind of similar, you can go play Stray.
It's so cute and good. Like, you will love it, I promise.
If you want a cutesy, homey little game about, ranching slimes that's just semi-similar art style, I'd say go play Slime Rancher. You could go play the Shelter games.
I was also gonna, suggest, just in terms of, unique animation that's out there, I'm not entirely sure if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but one that we were thinking about covering before we scheduled everything out was Love, Death, and Robots. It's like a series of short films on Netflix, and they're not really connected or anything, and it is mostly sci-fi. It's not the same vibe as this, but if you're wanting, unique animation that looks really cool and is made in different parts of the world, I would definitely check it out.
There's so many things you could do that could give you either a similar feel, similar art style, or if you just want to support indie animation. There's so much just a click away on the internet to go find anything you want and go support anyone. I think that's going to wrap it up for today. We hope you enjoyed this podcast about Flow. So game on, Bob Jones.
Bye.